When I walked through the hospital doors, no one was looking at me. They had noticed the tension of the man beside me. He was 73 years old, restless, impatient. The medical staff thought I was his daughter. I didn't object. I had already learned years ago not to speak up. When the doctors began examining me, their expressions changed. The silence dragged on. My skin was almost colorless. Most of my teeth were rotten. The ones left were barely holding on. To them, I looked less like a young girl and more like an old woman carrying the weight of years. I heard their whispers. "This girl can't be his daughter." Then they said the truth. I was not his daughter. I was his granddaughter. And I was only 19 years old. The horror I saw on their faces at that moment was actually nothing yet, because what they were about to learn was the kind of thing they would never forget for the rest of their professional lives. Only one sentence was running through my mind. "No one will believe me." Lost fast. This channel tells the dark moments in the history of humanity. On this channel, we tell real moments where control never returned. My name is Elizabeth, and this is a story that began on the day control was taken from me. I was living in Amstetten, one of Austria's quiet towns. This small town has been remembered throughout its life for its ordinariness, but for me it was a bad kind of ordinary. Joseph Fritzl, born in 1935, my father, was a handsome and respected engineer. Beneath that, however, he had a horrifying personality. This personality was shaped by his mother, an authoritarian, harsh, and oppressive woman. My mother, Rosemary Fritzl, was a calm woman who always submitted to my father. My father's dominant personality crushed her. She accepted the order of the household without questioning it. They had 7 children in this marriage. I was the 4th. I say children, but I never had a childhood. My mother and father were constantly fighting. He used violence against us and against my mother almost every day. Enduring it had become very difficult. I was one of the few who dared to defy my father, so I took most of the beatings. I was stubborn. I resisted. But when I was abused at age 11, I didn't want to live anymore. It was impossible to describe what it was like. When I turned 15, after completing compulsory education mandated by the state, I started a waitressing training course. However, before finishing the course, I ran away to Vienna with a friend by skipping work, but within 3 weeks we were found by the police, and I was handed back to my disgusting family again. When I returned, I continued my waitress training and received a job offer. Just when everything seemed to be going well, I had never accounted for what my father would do. Knowing that once I went far away, I would completely fall outside his control, my father Joseph put into action the plan he had been waiting on for a long time. On August 28, 1984, shortly after I turned 18, my father told me I needed to help him carry a door and took me down to the basement. For the past 6 years, Joseph had convinced everyone that he was building an underground shelter for us, talking about the Cold War and the need to be prepared against the threat of war, persuading everyone of this innocent shelter. My father had me hold the door, and shortly after slammed it into my face, throwing me backward into the shelter. Only the cold light of the fluorescent lamp slowed the passage of time a little. This was not my place, but it was going to become my new living space. I had to get used to it, yet that felt impossible. This living space would in fact become a torture chamber that would last for years. After my father locked me in the basement, my mother, Rosemary, reported me missing to the police. She said that I had run away to join a cult and that she had expected this to happen, and because he had forced me to write a letter saying that I had run away, and because I had previously run away from home at the age of 15, the police were convinced that I had left voluntarily and stopped looking for me. While everything went on normally upstairs, my days in the dungeon were dark and painful. My father visited me every day. Every day she provided me with food and essential supplies, but the amount of food offered was limited. It was often stale or moldy. But The most devastating thing was the loneliness, not being able to talk to anyone, not being able to see the sunlight. The most painful part was an unwanted relationship, being forced to share the same bed and the unwanted pregnancies that followed. He gave me disinfectant, dirty scissors, and a childbirth book from the 1960s. I was held captive in the underground prison for 24 years. During those 24 years, I gave birth to 7 children. In 1988, I became a mother, and a new period began for me. There was no doctor, no nurse, and no sterile environment. There was only the equipment Joseph brought. Joseph looked calm as he prepared me for childbirth, but for me it was filled with fear and pain. When my baby was born, the first silence of this dungeon was broken. For me, this meant both hope and hopelessness. I was no longer worried only for myself, but for the baby as well. After the birth, Joseph changed the living arrangement in the basement. A crib, a few toys, and some clothes could fit into the small space. For my child, I followed Joseph's rules, just like my mother had, because any act of rebellion could endanger the baby's life. Joseph was someone capable of anything. Of my 7 children, my father took 3, Lisa, Monica, and Alexander, from me and brought them to my mother, leaving them at her door, and he forced me to write a letter. In this letter, it said that I could not take care of the children and that I was in difficult conditions. This story was accepted as true for a while by neighbors and authorities. One of these children fell ill shortly after birth. Because of this illness, the child died. Joseph burned the dead baby in the furnace. The other 3 children, Kirsten, Stefan, and Felix, were with me in the basement. As the years passed, some neighbors began to notice the strange things about the Fritzl family. Joseph's interest in the basement, strange noises heard late at night, new items appearing in front of the house. But in a small town like Amstetten, no one questioned Joseph. They did not dare to suspect a man who appeared so respectable. The children who grew up in the basement began to suffer serious health problems. Poor ventilation, lack of sunlight, and inadequate nutrition, all of these negatively affected their development. But Joseph showed nothing. He did not allow the children to see a doctor. I tried to treat them with my own methods whenever they became ill. From 1988 until the early 2000s, we continued to live in the basement. Kirsten, the eldest of the children, was 19 years old when she suddenly became seriously ill. For days she suffered fainting spells and had difficulty breathing. I begged Joseph to take his daughter to the hospital. At first he refused, because that would mean the secrets he had hidden for years would be exposed. Joseph was left with no choice and took her to the hospital. When Kirsten was admitted, the doctors became concerned about her condition. They began to suspect something. There were signs of vitamin D deficiency caused by a lack of sunlight, developmental delays, and malnutrition in her body. The hospital administration immediately informed the police because it was clear that Kirsten had been kept in a confined space. Joseph continued the lie he had repeated for years, but I stopped it. After 24 years, I stopped it. For the first time in 24 years, I was able to speak. After hours of interrogation, I was finally able to tell everything. I am Elizabeth. My father has kept me at home for 24 years. He has been hiding me in his basement. This sentence shook Austria and the entire world. The police immediately detained the Fritzl family and raided the house. When the basement door was opened, the horrific truth he had hidden for years appeared before them. Narrow corridors, damp walls, small rooms where children had lived. The police officers were shocked by what they saw. My father, Joseph Fritzl, was arrested in 2008. Neighbors, friends, even my mother Rosemary were in shock. With my confession in April 2008, the horrific secret hidden in that seemingly ordinary house in the town of Amstetten spread across the world. It was revealed that 7 children had been born and raised in this basement, and that 1 child had lost their life. From that moment on, It was not just a family, but a nightmare that an entire society had to confront. After Joseph Fritzl was arrested, the Austrian press kept the story on the front pages for days. Newspaper front pages carried the headline, "The Monster of Amstetten." In the first days, Joseph partially denied his crimes. He said he loved his children and wanted to protect them. He claimed that he had locked his children in the basement, that they had lived normal lives and that they were happy. However, the testimonies of me and the children, photographs taken in the basement, medical reports, and physical evidence destroyed this defense. It became clear that the system Joseph had created under the guise of protection was, in fact, systematic torture. In 2009, the court announced its final verdict. Joseph Fritzl was sentenced to life imprisonment. He was found guilty of all charges, including murder and incest. When the verdict was announced, silence filled the courtroom. Joseph lowered his head. He said nothing. For us, this had been a nightmare that lasted for years. That was the moment it officially ended. Freedom meant everything to us. Seeing the sky was frightening for us. Our education levels were different. Some were still learning to read and write. The Austrian state prepared a special rehabilitation program for us. Psychologists, doctors, teachers, and social workers were the experts who mobilized to help this family hold on to life again. As for me, I was finally able to fully experience the maternal love I had suppressed for years. This event resonated worldwide. Newspapers carried headlines such as "The Underground Family," "24 Years in the Basement," and "Austria's Dark Face." Documentaries, books, and films were made, but I avoided the media. I did not want to constantly see myself and remind my children of these things. We are now living a happy life in Village X in Austria. In 2013, work began to fill in the basement. After the old Fritzl house was sealed with concrete, the property was sold 3 years later to buyers who converted the building into apartments. Joseph Fritzl was transferred in May 2017 to a special prison unit for mentally ill offenders at Austria's Kremsmünster prison to serve his sentence. Joseph Fritzl changed his name to Joseph Mehrhoff and stated that he felt no remorse for his crimes. It was reported that Joseph said, "Look at other people's basements. You can find other families and girls there." For more videos like this, you can subscribe and share your thoughts with me in the comments section.